Hey my dudes, today we gotta talk about potentially the saddest people in all of gaming, depending on your opinion anyway. Regular opinions about gankers seem to vary from they are dumb at best to cringe and malicious at worst. Now this is not necessarily about the how of it, it's about the why of it. Why do gankers gank? Because most well-adjusted people that look at gankers ask the question, why would you do that? That's cringe, embarrassing even, you know what I mean? Now before I can get to the important stuff, there's a few things I gotta explain. Firstly, what makes a ganker? How do you know if someone is ganking? Well, in my opinion, there's a few criteria that has to be met by the players. Number one, there has to be multiple of them, whether it's 2 or 3 or 4. You get what I mean, it depends on the game also. Number 2, they have to be intentionally getting invaded, whether they're using taunters or dried finger, depending on the game also. And number 3, the most important factor is they have no intention of progressing the game. They're not trying to go to the boss, they're not trying to accomplish any other goal, they're just trying to stand there and cheese invaders 3v1 on easy mode. These are the quintessential textbook gankers, in my opinion, and many other invaders' opinions. Secondly, I've got to address the 5,000-pound elephant in the room. I do not like gankers. It is well known. I've spent a lot of time making fun of them and mocking them. 1, because it's funny, and 2, because their behavior actually is a cancer upon the invasion community, and they deserve to be mocked. Their behavior should be stigmatized. Now, a lot of invaders do feel solidarity in this idea with me, but there's gonna be people out there that don't like this or don't agree. If you're one of those people, you can always just fuck off, or leave a bitchy comment, either or. That being said, I'm going to try to be as civil as I can during my explanation, but it's probably going to get at least a little rowdy. Now that that stuff's out of the way, we can talk about why gankers gank. I've done some research for this topic. I use the term research loosely, but I've also just been dealing with gankers for a very long time. Since Dark Souls 1 actually, that's about the time I got started invading in Souls games, and I've always done it ever since. I have seen what gankers do, I've seen how they act, I've heard their justifications and explanations for ganking, I've heard their reasons for hating invaders in the Souls PvP community in general. I've found out about as much about gankers as I can without actually becoming one, so I feel like I'm somewhat qualified to talk about this subject. And I gotta tell ya, gankers are not a monolith. They have many different factions and ideologies and reasons for ganking, and I'm going to go into all that now. This right here is the all-encompassing reason that like 90% of gankers gank. Like I said, there's a lot of reasonings and ideologies for ganking, but this one kind of overlaps with everything else, and that is defeatist mentality. These are players that know they're not very good at the game, okay? They don't stand much of a chance in real PvP, like Colosseum or more importantly, invasions. So in their minds, what they need to do is play PvP on easy mode. Essentially, they need to set up an unlosable situation, which is a gank, so no matter how bad they are, they can still have a pretty decent chance of beating a much more seasoned player. Now, I don't know if they refuse to get better because they're too lazy or if they're scared to lose in the process of getting better. I'm not sure what that is. But honestly, a lot of the time, gankers are just ganking because they're bad, even if there is a lot of other reasons along with that. And the 10% of players that aren't ganking because they're bad, the good ones that know how to play, are just lazy. They just want to turn their brain off and push buttons, which is arguably even sadder than those that don't want to get better. This aspect of the ganker psyche is incredibly depressing, because honestly, losing honest and straight up as an invader or a duelist is way less embarrassing than winning by ganking. And the thing is, if they keep ganking, which they always do, they will never get better. Ganking is so brain dead easy, it makes you worse at the game. So they're just gonna perpetually be this way. If you think I'm wrong about the defeatist mentality, pay attention to what gankers do when they beat you 3v1. In that situation, essentially what they've done is win an unlosable fight. Nobody thinks that's impressive, except for them. They will point down, throw a shit jar, or teabag you. Now, they do this to make themselves feel better, to boost their own ego, not to make you mad. Pay attention to what gankers do when they think they're gonna lose. They sprint away to the fog door, they disconnect, or they run away to resummon. They do anything they can to make themselves feel like they're not losing, or that they didn't lose. It's absolutely insane. Now we're going to talk about the first type of ganker. I call these ones revenge gankers. These are gankers that at one point were just PvEers. At some point they were going through a level and they summoned a couple phantoms to help them out. Then they get invaded. They think to themselves, okay, I'm the main character, I got 3 guys, I got double heals, I got a rune arc, I should win this fight 100% of the time, I have overwhelming odds, which is true, but somehow that invader overpowers them all. Now, when this happens, it can seriously hurt the host's ego, okay, it can shatter that illusion that they're the main character, and it's at this moment that the host might develop a hatred for invaders and turn to ganking. Revenge gankers are some of the most pathetic and vindictive gankers there are. That is because these gankers are incapable of accepting that the reason those invaders overpowered them against all odds is because they're just that much better. No, these gankers tell themselves that invaders are unfair or immoral or just straight up overpowered, and when they get into these gank squads they do everything they can to make invaders miserable to get back at them. Another ubiquitous type of ganker I want to talk about is the hero ganker. These are kind of weird because they're clearly trying to justify ganking because they know it's cringe, right? They claim that they want to defend the honest PvE hosts. They claim that invasions are unfair and, unwarranted and unjustifiable towards PvE hosts, so they want you to invade gankers instead. Essentially, that's their purpose that they claim. Now, this is extremely brain dead because Elden Ring has the easiest invasions for hosts ever, and this is probably the easiest it ever will get for hosts. How could you make the claim that hosts are somehow the underdog that need defending? I don't know. That's wild. Truth is, I don't think they give a single shit about PvEers. I think they just want to justify their ganking, make it seem less cringe and more acceptable, which doesn't work. The most notorious type of ganker is the shitter. Shitters exist solely just to make everyone else miserable, especially invaders. They want to annoy you, make your game unplayable, and ultimately for you to quit, especially if you're an invader. These are the types of gankers that go to the lowest points to make sure they never lose and to make sure you have no fun. They use the most cancerous builds they possibly can. They spam all the fucking time to make invasions against them unplayable. If they think they're gonna lose, they just straight up disconnect or run to the fog door or whatever. They're pathetic is my point. Almost all gankers do this cringe stuff every now and then to get their way, right? But shitters make it a religion. They are the worst of the worst, the most cancerous gankers, the bottom of the barrel of the Souls PvP community, if you could even consider them part of the PvP community. These guys get made fun of and mocked by pretty much everybody, whether they're PvEers or invaders, whatever. But the thing is, they don't care. Actually, they like this. They want to be made fun of. They want to be hated. Nothing we can say or do is going to make them stop their behavior. Now we gotta talk about the attention-seeking gankers. These are gankers that oftentimes can just fit right into the shitter archetype. A lot of the time they're doing the same exact stuff, but with even more desperation. Not always though, sometimes they're relatively normal as gankers can be anyway. But attention-seeking gankers are gankers that intentionally gank streamers, especially when they're live. These dudes might have a lot of the same methods as the shitters, but they have a slightly different motivation. They want some clout, they want some respect and acknowledgement. They think that beating a streamer is going to get them that respect and acknowledgement. But here's the thing, if they have to gank and set up these unlosable situations just to beat one player, one streamer, then everybody's just gonna think that they're a loser who's bad at the game and desperate. And they would be correct. That's absolutely true about these people. This seems to go against their goal. They want attention, acknowledgement, respect, but they're getting the opposite. Everybody in the chat is making fun of them because they're doing all this cringy stuff just to beat a streamer. After a while of doing this, the gankers usually develop a grudge against the streamer. Then they start doing it just to make them miserable as much as they can. And at this point, they're pretty much just textbook shitters, okay? Now, not every intentional ganker of a streamer is a total piece of shit, okay? Some of them are relatively okay. They're doing goofy thematic ganks and stuff like that, right? But the vast majority of them seem to be completely desperate scumbags that want attention. And I'm not sorry about what I said. Now we can talk about probably the least hateable types of gankers, casual gankers. These are almost always new players to the series that don't really understand anything, they don't really know about the PvP community, they don't know what ganking is or why it's bad or why it's typically taboo in the community. No, they just probably randomly stumbled into ganking one day and kept doing it because they could turn their brain off and have some fun with their friends. They just don't know any better. Now, the best thing we can do for these players is to try to educate them about invasions in Colosseum. We want them to try real PvP, because at this point they're not too far gone. They can be saved from the ganker ideology. You just have to work at it. The final type of ganker I'm going to talk about today is the goofy ganker. These gankers are not necessarily doing it for bad reasons. They're not trying to boost their ego or make anyone miserable. They might be doing it because they're not very good at PvP. That might be true, but if it is true, it's probably the secondary reason. The primary reason for their ganking is to make other players laugh, because these are the type of dudes that are doing like thematic Ninja Turtles ganks and stuff like that. Some invaders really like these type of gankers. Me personally, I prefer an organic invasion, because the whole point of invasions is that you're fighting someone who's trying to complete the game, you know. These gankers are not doing that, even if they're trying to be funny and goofy, you know. But, like I said, some invaders really like this, and I think they're probably one of the lesser egregious types of gankers. Well, that's all the major types of gankers, their ideologies, and their reasons for ganking. At least the ones that I could figure out. I'm sure I missed some. I'm not gonna claim like I understand gankers perfectly, but I've spent a lot of time trying to figure these people out, because they're just fucking weird, to be frank. Now, there is some overlap between these types of gankers, their behaviors, and their ideologies. You gotta keep that in mind. I separated them into archetypes, basically to make this YouTube video simpler, because there's so many different variables here, there's so many different ways that they think, but you get it. Now that we've gotten the important stuff out of the way, I suppose I could explain why I don't like gankers so much, because I said that earlier. To put it simply, invasions are supposed to be dynamic and organic. They are supposed to be an unexpected surprise, and they are supposed to be invading a host that is actually trying to progress the level and accomplish something. The thing about gankers is they're not trying to accomplish anything. They're just standing there trying to cheese invaders 3v1 on easy mode. This goes against the spirit of invasions. If the host isn't trying to accomplish anything, and he's expecting to get invaded, then there's no reason for the invasion. It's a waste of fucking time, honestly. We're supposed to be a difficulty wildcard in the level, but if you're not trying to complete it, there's just no reason for invaders to be there. Also, gankers tend to clog up the invasion matchmaking in Souls games, so anybody who's using taunters or dried finger gets moved right up to the top of the invasion queue, over and over and over, so even if there's 1,000 organic invasions out there, it'll just keep throwing you back to the same 5 or 10 gank squads over and over again. This is also the reason that so many new invaders give up, because these games just keep on throwing them back to the same gank squads that are unfun, spammy, and unrelenting. It kinda sucks, honestly. It's just a bad situation. On top of all this, I just hate cowardice. I hate the way that gankers would rather gank and play on easy mode than actually get better. It kinda hurts me deep inside. Well, I think I've said all I need to say today. I think you understand why gankers gank and all the separate types of gankers and ideologies and factions of ganker, if you want to use that word. I've been wanting to make this YouTube video for a long time, but it was really hard to restrain myself from just talking shit the entire time. I think I did a pretty good job, but it was a little rowdy, just like I said. I appreciate you guys listening to me yap. I'm gonna do a lot more YouTube videos just like this, yapping videos, so be sure to like and subscribe if you're cool, and dislike if you dislike it, or just don't fucking do anything. I don't give a shit. Oh yeah, if you want to watch my live streams, be sure to hit the notification bell, because I can't keep a schedule to save my life. I hope you have a good rest of your day.